When people talk about the worst seasons in the history of the San Diego Chargers, this one has to be up there. The 1991 season was a complete and utter disaster in just about every sense of the word. You knew it was going to be bad when the Chargers literally fired their offensive coordinator after just one game, in an incident that you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And things only continued to get worse, as the Chargers spent practically the entire season out of the playoff hunt. They started the season off with an 0-5 record, lost 4 of their final 5 games to end the year at 4-12. They finished dead last in the AFC West. They finished near the bottom of the NFL in just about every major statistical category on both offense and defense, and never looked remotely competent, as you can probably tell from all these lowlights. It wasn't often back then that the Chargers were outright bad. They had some mediocre and below average seasons for sure after the golden era with Dan Fouts and Don Coryell, but they were rarely, if ever, one of the worst teams in football. The 1991 season changed that, as it was probably the worst season for the team since the league expanded to 28 teams in 1976. When I say that nothing went right for the San Diego Chargers in 1991, I truly mean it. Nothing went right for the San Diego Chargers in 1991. And if you want an example of nothing going right during this season right here, may I introduce you to one of the worst promotions in the history of the National Football League, and a promotion so bad that it deserves a deep dive more than 3 decades later. Because did you ever wonder what happens when you combine the NFL with the NBA and combine football with basketball? You get a bizarre, poorly planned, poorly thought out mess of a situation that was absolutely embarrassing. And we're going to tell that story today. Because this is the story behind the bizarre controversy between the San Diego Chargers and the Minnesota Timberwolves of all teams, and how the well-intended, albeit extremely poorly thought out promotion went horribly wrong. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel, because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one that you might not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about the promotion that was anything but a slam dunk. Before I talk about the incident in question, we need some context to understand the predicament that the Chargers were in heading into the 1991 season. And to do this, we need to talk about this season right here, as in the 1990 season. In 1990, the Chargers were pretty bad. Not quite as bad as they would be in 1991, but they were really bad. Not once did the Chargers spend a day above 500, and the team finished the year with a poor 6-10 record after dropping their final 3 games and 5 of their final 6 games. There was not a lot of excitement around the Chargers, I'll put it that way, as it's hard to draw fans to your stadium when not only were you a bad team, but you've been bad for a while. The 1991 season was the first year that the Chargers were just downright atrocious in a long time, but make no mistake, Charger fans hadn't had a lot to cheer for as of late, and this 1990 season was no exception. The Chargers hadn't made the playoffs since the strike in 1982. Entering the 1990 season, they were going on, amazingly enough, the longest active playoff drought of any team in the AFC, and they were tied with the Atlanta Falcons, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Phoenix Cardinals for the longest active playoff drought in the NFL. And when you haven't made the playoffs in roughly a decade, when there's so much competition for the entertainment dollar, considering how nice the weather is year-round in San Diego, and when you don't look competitive, it's hard getting people to come to the games. In 1990, the Chargers had 8 home games. Only one of them sold out, which was a game against the Los Angeles Raiders, where visiting fans bought up a good chunk of the seats, considering the fact that the Raiders had a huge Southern California presence and were a good team, making it to the AFC Championship that year. This means that 7 games got blacked out, and more than half of them drew a crowd under 49,000 spectators, meaning that Jack Murphy Stadium was practically a ghost town half the time by NFL standards. Even though the average attendance across the entire NFL was over 60,000, which was the highest in league history at the time, the Chargers were sagging well below that with an average attendance of just 49,218, one of the lowest totals in the league. You're probably wondering why I'm harping so much about the Chargers' attendance during this season. Well, I bring all of that up because the promotion we're going to talk about was flawed from day one. Because for their home opener of the 1991 season, as in this game right here, the Chargers were hoping to get more fans than they had in 1990, and decided to give away free hats to everyone who came, ordering, I kid you not, 62,000 hats. You know how a lot of teams have promotions where the first 10,000 or 20,000 fans to enter the stadium get something? The Chargers decided to order 62,000 hats that would only be given away during the home opener, even though not a single game drew 62,000 fans in 1990, and the average attendance for the team was 49,000 the year before, with no signs and indications of it getting better. There is ambition, and then there's stupidity. If I go on tour, and my last tour filled up arenas at 70% capacity, and I decide to do another arena tour, that's way different than if I decide to do a stadium tour. Like, you're wasting so much money with that, and for no justifiable reason. You're not going to sell at a stadium. Plus, not everyone's going to want a hat, and not everyone that attends the game will even pick up the hat because they're not fans of the Chargers. So ordering 62,000 hats for a one-time giveaway promotion is insane work. And to make things even more insane, there had never, not once in the history of the Chargers, been a home game that they played in that attracted at least 62,000 fans. If every single hat went, that would have made this, quite literally, the highest attended game in Chargers history. Whoever was in charge of doing the math for this promotion was off their rocker, so already, this promotion was fundamentally flawed. First 10,000 or 20,000 fans? Fine. Heck, you want to go super ambitious and say the first 50,000 fans get a hat? Knock yourself out. But 62,000 fans will get hats, and we've never had a game get that many people in our life? You're crazy. But now, let's talk about that 1991 opener against the Falcons on the field. To the surprise of no one, the Chargers did not sell out the game, but more on that in just a bit. In terms of the actual on-field play, the Chargers entered this one reeling with an 0-2 record, and things were about to get a heck of a lot worse when the Falcons sent them to 0-3, taking the game by a final score of 13-10, thanks to a missed field goal by John Carney at the end of the contest. The Chargers had no answers on this day for Steve Broussard at running back, as Broussard had over 100 rushing yards for the Falcons and over 5 yards per carry. San Diego was not good on third down, and they set themselves up in way too many unmanageable situations, as the Chargers went just 2 for 10 on third down, converting just 20% of the time. Combine that with San Diego losing the time of possession battle, the total yardage battle, and not winning the turnover battle, and that's usually not going to bode too well for you. By this point, the Chargers were 0-3, and seeing as only one team in NFL history in a non-strike season had made the playoffs following an 0-3 start, the season for the Chargers was pretty much over before the official end of summer. Not good at all. But getting back to the attendance, this game was not well attended at all. Combine the good weather of San Diego with a lack of success over the past decade and an 0-2 start to this season, including the offensive coordinator getting fired after one game, and many people chose to stay home and not buy tickets to this game. In total, only 44,804 fans showed up to Jack Murphy Stadium to watch their Chargers lose. So, good job, Charger promotional people. You only missed the mark and overpaid by a solid 18,000 fans. Definitely in the right ballpark. Now, you might be saying to yourself, come on. You're doing a story on a team expecting 62,000 fans and only getting 44,000 fans? You're doing a story on a promotion that went wrong behind the scenes because of the turnout? Well, not quite. Because if that was the major issue with this promotion, it would be a blunder. But it's not the type of blunder that's worth harping on more than 3 decades later. It's a stupid blunder, and a blunder that made the team take a major L and put them in the red, but a super forgettable blunder. Because as it turns out, it was a really good thing that only 44,000 fans showed up and there weren't 62,000 fans in attendance like the Chargers hoped for. Because when the Chargers got the order for the hats, they noticed something just a little bit odd and a little bit peculiar about some of them. And by some, I don't mean just 1 or 2. I mean 8,000 of them. Because when the Chargers got their order, you guessed it, 8,000 of the hats featured this team right here, the Minnesota Timberwolves. No, I am not making that up. The San Diego Chargers got Minnesota Timberwolves hats. The Minnesota Timberwolves, for those of you who don't know, are a basketball team. They do not play in San Diego. In fact, they are nowhere near California. The Minnesota Timberwolves logo is not that of a lightning bolt on a football helmet, as the Chargers logo was back then. The logo of the Timberwolves back in 1991 was a wolf inside of a basketball. The San Diego Chargers do not use green in their logo the same way that the Minnesota Timberwolves do. And likewise, the Minnesota Timberwolves do not use yellow in their logo the same way that the San Diego Chargers do. Oh, and the Minnesota Timberwolves play a completely different sport. This isn't one of those things where 2 brands and 2 companies have eerily similar logos, and there was a minor mix-up with a couple of the products. These were 2 completely different brands that could not possibly be mixed up, and somehow an 8,000-piece promotion and order was bungled. This is like if I decided that I needed to buy some more Dallas Cowboys mini helmets for the studio. So I go online and buy them. And next thing I know, I'm now in possession of 50 mini baseball helmets of the Baltimore Orioles. It's one thing to screw up how much product you need. It's another thing to screw up the exact product you need by 8,000. Unfortunately for us, but I suppose fortunately for the Chargers, nobody got the San Diego Chargers hats donned with the inscription and the logo of this team right here, the Minnesota Timberwolves. If the Chargers promised everyone in attendance a free hat and somehow hit that 62,000 fan mark, or even hit 56,000 fans, or something along those lines, that would have made for some extremely interesting litigation and public relations work, seeing as I don't think I'm going to an Arizona Diamondbacks game for a cap giveaway and expecting to walk in and get a hat of the Charlotte Hornets. All 44,000 fans that showed up to the game and wanted hats got the hats of the Chargers, meaning that now the Chargers had a minimum of 10,000 hats left over from their team and 8,000 hats of the Minnesota Timberwolves that they had no idea what to do with. Because I'm not even sure the arena where the Timberwolves play has 8,000 hats in stock at once. It was fitting, though, that of all the teams to get in the mix-up, that it was the Timberwolves, seeing as they were one of the worst teams in basketball at the time, much like the Chargers were one of the worst teams in football. Maybe the Chargers would have fared off better in 1991 as a basketball team, seeing as they sure as heck didn't fare well as a football team. I've covered some absolutely bizarre promotions gone wrong on this channel before, one of which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And this is up there for one of the most bizarre of the bunch. Not necessarily in concept, but in terms of execution. Giving away hats to fans? Nothing unusual there. Giving away 62,000 hats when you've never touched that number before, and when that's way more than your season average last year? Okay, that's kind of odd. Giving away 62,000 hats, not being able to give them all away because the attendance was really bad, and still having 8,000 additional hats left over for a completely different team, in a completely different state, in a completely different sport? Now we're talking. If you ever wondered how the San Diego Chargers of the NFL and the Minnesota Timberwolves of the NBA are intertwined with each other, here you go. Because in 1991, the Atlanta Falcons not only beat the San Diego Chargers, but apparently also beat the Minnesota Timberwolves. San Diego Super T-Wolves, I suppose. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.